Close your eyes for a second. Imagine it's a random Tuesday morning like any other. It's raining, you're stuck in traffic on the M1, dreading the meeting with that manager who breathes down your neck. Then, your phone buzzes. You look down, you blink, and you look again. The numbers match. All of them. In a single heartbeat, the traffic, the debt, the rent, the boss, it all dissolves. You're free. You're wealthy beyond comprehension. You're buying a vineyard in the Barossa and a yacht in the Whitsundays. This is the dream we're sold. It's the golden carrot dangled in front of millions of Australians every single week. It's the reason grandmothers queue at newsagents and construction workers tap their screens on lunch breaks. But the truth is that dream is a product. It's a manufactured commodity sold to you by a corporate machine that only cares about your wallet. Welcome to the industrial complex of hope. While you're fantasizing about quitting your job, there's a sophisticated, ASX-listed giant calculating exactly how to keep you playing until you die. The business model behind it is a ruthless monopoly that has survived wars, depressions, and pandemics, morphing from a pub-run sweepstake into a multi-billion-dollar empire. Today, they're called the Lottery Corporation. Sounds official, doesn't it? Almost boring. But dig a little deeper, and you find a history of aggressive takeovers, a marriage of convenience with the gambling giants of Tabcorp, and a business model that essentially privatizes hope while socializing the addiction. This is the story of how a simple game of chance became one of Australia's most ruthless revenue engines. Like all good Australian stories, this one starts in a pub. Rewind to the late 19th century, and George Adams, a publican in Sydney, had a problem. He wanted to run a sweepstake on the Sydney Cup, but the wowsers and moral guardians of New South Wales shut him down. So he did what any enterprising businessman would do. He moved to Tasmania, where in the 1890s, Tatts would be born. Back then, the pitch was different. Lotteries were sold to the public as a necessary evil that did some actual good. The narrative was simple. The government would go, "Hey, you like to gamble, don't you? Just do it with us, and we'll use the profits to build hospitals, pave roads, and fund schools." It was the ultimate guilt-free flutter. They managed to brand gambling as an act of patriotism, and for decades, this social contract held firm. State governments ran their own lotteries, and the revenue flowed directly back into the public purse. But there's an unspoken phenomenon in business. If a public utility makes enough money, the private sector will eventually want to eat it. As the 20th century rolled on, governments realized that running lotteries was hard work. You have to manage logistics, print tickets, and handle security. Why do that when you can license it out to a private operator and just skim the tax off the top? This shift from public service to private enterprise opened the door for Tatts Group to explode. From their base in Tasmania, they launched a massive expansion campaign, snapping up licenses in Victoria, Queensland, the Northern Territory, and South Australia. By the 2010s, Tatts had evolved into a corporate beast, far removed from its simple sweepstakes origins. But in this industry, the only safe position is absolute market dominance. And that ambition led to one of the most controversial corporate marriages in Australian history. The year was 2017. The gambling landscape was shifting, and online betting agencies from overseas were flooding the market, and the local giants were getting nervous. Enter Tabcorp. Tabcorp dominated wagering, horse racing, and media. They were the aggressive, testosterone-fueled side of the industry. The executives at both companies looked at each other and saw a perfect fit. If they merged, they would create an $11 billion colossus. A single entity that controlled your Saturday lotto ticket, your bet on the Melbourne Cup, the poker machines at your local RSL, and the Keno screen flickering in the corner of the pub. The merger would establish a comprehensive gambling ecosystem where they could capture every single dollar a punter had, regardless of whether they preferred numbers, horses, or dogs. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission saw this coming, and they waved a massive red flag. The watchdog feared that this gambling Goliath would crush competition, dictate odds, and hold too much power over the Australian consumer. There were court battles, appeals, and endless lobbying. But this is Australia, where the gambling lobby holds a terrifying amount of political sway. In the end, the deal was pushed through and the monster was born. For a few years, Tabcorp and Tatts were one. They integrated their systems, streamlined their tech, and cross-promoted their products. But they had a cultural clash. Investors love the steady, reliable cash flow of lotteries. It's recession-proof. Even when the economy tanks, people still buy lotto tickets because, well, they're desperate. It's a low-risk, high-margin business. Wagering, on the other hand, is volatile. It faces intense regulatory heat, taxes are higher, and the public stigma against sports betting is growing every year. The quote, clean money of lotteries was being dragged down by the quote, dirty money of wagering. The shareholders weren't happy. The investors, or at least the ones who want to pretend their portfolios are ethical, didn't want to touch a company that made money from poker machines and horse racing. But they loved the lottery. So the board made a calculated decision and decided to perform corporate surgery. Fast forward to 2021. The board announced a demerger. They would slice the company in half. The gritty, regulatory-heavy betting arm would keep the name Tabcorp, while the shiny, high-margin, family-friendly lottery arm would be spun off into a new entity, the Lottery Corporation. By shedding the baggage of Tabcorp, the Lottery Corporation, let's call them TLC, could present itself to the market as a pure, wholesome infrastructure asset. They traded the gritty gambling company label for the cleaner title of lottery operator. When TLC hit the Australian Securities Exchange, it instantly became a blue chip stock because they own the licenses. In Australia, you can't just start a lottery. You need a government license, and these licenses are long-term monopolies. TLC holds the keys to the kingdom in almost every state. They operate Powerball, Oz Lotto, Saturday Lotto, Set for Life, Lucky Lotteries, and Instant Scratchits. They are the house. And in this game, the house owns the table, the cards, and the building. In the 2022-2023 financial year, this newly minted corporation reported over $3.5 billion in revenue. To put that into perspective, that's more than the GDP of entire Pacific Island nations. So let's take a hard look at the product itself. If you bought a toaster that only worked once every 134 million times you pushed the lever, you would sue the manufacturer. You'd call it a scam. But when the Lottery Corporation sells you a Powerball ticket with those exact odds, we call it entertainment. The mathematics of the Australian lottery are brutal. The odds of winning the Division 1 Powerball jackpot are 1 in 134,490,400. Let's visualize that. Imagine filling the Melbourne cricket ground with 100,000 people. Now imagine 1,344 stadiums just like it. One person, just one single person in that endless sea of humanity is the winner. Everyone else paid for that person's prize. Economists actually have a name for lotteries: the regressive tax. It's a tax on the poor and the hopeful. Studies consistently show that lottery spending is higher in lower income demographics. People who are financially secure, who have robust investment portfolios and high salaries, generally don't rely on a 1 in 134 million shot to secure their future. They might play for fun when the jackpot hits $100 million, but they aren't the base. The base consists of people living paycheck to paycheck, people for whom the lottery is an exit strategy. The Lottery Corporation knows this. They bypass the math entirely to sell you escapism. It's never about the odds, it's about the result. Freedom, live the life, set for life. They frame the purchase as a low-cost investment in a potential future. For the price of a coffee, you buy the right to dream for a few days. That's the value proposition. You're paying for the fantasy and not the reality. And the reality is that the payout ratios are stingy. In a casino, a slot machine might return 85% to 90% of the money put in back to the players over time. In the lottery, it's often closer to 50 to 60%. The rest is swallowed by government taxes, retailer commissions, and corporate profits. It is, statistically speaking, one of the worst bets you can possibly make. But because the entry price is so low, people don't treat it with the same caution we treat a $50 hand of blackjack. It flies under the radar of our financial common sense. If the odds weren't bad enough, the delivery system has evolved to make losing money easier than ever. In the old days, you had to physically go to a newsagent. You had to hand over cash. There was friction. That friction was a natural brake on spending. You might skip a week because it was raining or because you forgot. The Lottery Corporation has aggressively pivoted to digital. They've moved the lottery from the corner store to your pocket. The app is slick, colorful, and incredibly dangerous. It removes the friction. You can subscribe and you can set up autoplay so you never miss a draw. The money leaves your bank account without you even having to make a conscious decision. It turns an active purchase into a passive drain on your finances. This digital shift allows for dark patterns in user experience design. Have you ever noticed how the app celebrates a win? You spend $25 on a ticket and you win $14. The screen explodes with confetti. But you didn't win, of course. You lost $11. In the psychology of gambling, this is called a loss disguised as a win. Your brain gets a hit of dopamine because of the lights and sounds, reinforcing the behavior, even though your bank balance went down. Then there's the near miss effect. You check your numbers. You needed 7, 12, 34, and 45. You got 7, 12, and 33. So close, you think. I almost had it. Your brain interprets this near miss as a sign that your luck is improving, that you're honing in on the target. But in a random number generation, a near miss is mathematically identical to a total miss. Getting 3 numbers right doesn't mean you're close to getting 6 right next time. The odds reset completely, but the feeling remains, and that feeling keeps you clicking play again. The Lottery Corporation is now a tech company as much as a gambling company. They're harvesting data on your play style, your frequency, and your spending habits. They can send push notifications at the exact time of day you're most likely to buy. Friday afternoon, payday, and lunch breaks. They're weaponizing convenience to ensure the revenue stream never dries up. So, why is all this allowed? If a bank sold a financial product that lost money for 99.99% of its customers, the regulators would shut it down in a heartbeat. Why does the lottery get a pass? The answer is uncomfortable. The government is the biggest winner of all. State governments in Australia are addicted to gambling revenue. It funds the very infrastructure they promise the voters. Every time a ticket is sold, a significant chunk goes straight to the state treasury. We're talking billions of dollars a year in taxes and duties. If the government were to crack down on the lottery, they would blow a massive hole in their own budgets. This creates a conflict of interest that borders on corruption. The entity responsible for protecting the people is financial partners with the entity exploiting them. In this case, the Lottery Corporation. This is why you see endless debates about banning sports betting ads during footy games, but you rarely hear a politician railing against the Powerball draw being broadcast on primetime TV. The lottery is protected. It's viewed as soft gambling, distinct from the hard gambling of pokies and casinos. This soft image is carefully cultivated. The Lottery Corporation sponsors community events, they talk loudly about the taxes they pay, and they wrap themselves in the Australian flag and nostalgia. We're part of the fabric of the nation, they say. And they're right. They're a parasitic part of the fabric, feeding on the optimism of the working class with the full blessing of the state. In 2023, the Lottery Corporation paid out over $500 million in dividends to its investors. That's $500 million that didn't go to hospitals, to schools, and to prize winners. It went to investment funds and asset managers. The charity aspect of the lottery is a byproduct, a mandatory tax they have to pay to keep their license. It's not the goal. The goal is to maximize that dividend check. The system is designed to be efficient. Unlike sports betting, where a smart punter might actually beat the bookie occasionally, the lottery is mathematically unbeatable. There's no skill, there's no edge. The house has zero risk. They take the money, they keep a percentage, and they distribute the rest. It really is the perfect business model. It requires no real or big innovation, just maintenance of the hype machine. As we wrap this up, let's look at the big picture. The Lottery Corporation is a masterpiece of modern capitalism. It took a chaotic, fragmented industry and consolidated it into a streamlined, digital money printer. It survived the ACCC, it survived the demerger from Tabcorp, and it has emerged stronger than ever. It's a business that thrives on inequality. As the cost of living crisis bites harder, as housing becomes unaffordable and wages stagnate, the allure of the lottery actually grows. Desperation fuels the machine. When people feel like they can't work their way to a better life, they try to gamble their way there. The Lottery Corporation is banking on your lack of options. They're banking on the fact that for millions of Australians, a $15 ticket is the only hope they have left. So, the next time you see that upbeat commercial with the gold confetti and the ecstatic winners hugging on the beach, remember what you're actually looking at. You're staring directly at a ruthless, calculated extraction engine masquerading as a community service. A machine built to take a little bit from everyone, give a lot to almost no one, and keep the profits for itself. Sure, someone has to win. That's the rule at the end of the day, but the dirty truth of the Australian lottery business is that the real winner was decided long before the balls were ever drawn. The real winner is the corporation that printed the ticket. But what do you think? Is the lottery just a harmless bit of fun, or is it a predatory tax on the people who can least afford it? Do you still buy a ticket every week hoping for that miracle, or have you realized that the only guaranteed winner is the corporation itself? Let us know in the comments section below, and thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, stay curious.